Okay. 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 All right. Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. And I'm going to start with roll call. Sandra Barnes. Jessica Anthony.
Present.
Bill LeGrone.
Here.
Lisa Torres.
Here.
And I'm here. Dr. Holtum.
Here.
All right. And we will recess into closed session. Oh, wait. Do we have any public comment on closed session items? Oh, the board will extend an invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on items that are listed on the closed session agenda. For those attending remotely who wish to comment, use the raise your hand button to be called on to speak. Comments may also be mailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name in your email. Comments received pertaining to items listed on the closed session agenda will be read into the record during this time. However, comments received without the sender's name will not be read. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per subject.
Madam President, we have no items to be read for closed session. We do have a couple for open session.
Okay. Then we will go ahead and recess into closed session at 5:02. Okay, we're going to reconvene in, nope, we are not going to do that yet. Thank you. Been live the whole time.
Yep.
Okay, we are going to reconvene into open session at 6:01, and there is no action to report on from the closed session. So we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Justice for all. Now, comments and announcements by board members. Sandra. No comments. For the list. Jessica.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. They're not, they don't have a page number, do they? Yeah, no, I was looking for the roll call.
Oh.
Yeah. No? Okay. All right. Bill.
I have no comments at this time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Lisa?
I have no comment.
Okay. I would just like to say that I attended the Martin Luther King Day celebration at the Southside Community Center for Martin Luther King Day, and there was the presentation of the scholarships, and 9 local students received scholarships from the committee, and there was a celebration with dances and singers, and it was a wonderful community event, and I was proud to be there as a member of the community, and made some connections as a board member as well. Dr. Holtum?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple of announcements to share with you. First of all, I'd like to thank all those who helped put on a job fair this past Saturday at the Downtown Theater. We had 11 applicants come in. We were focusing on the classified side, and we had 11 people come in, and the HR office is currently working to get those individuals online to be part of our working staff here in OCESD. Also like to share that appreciate all of our staff members that have been pulling together to help us through this very trying and difficult pandemic season. We have a lot of staff and a lot of students who are absent, and our staff have been really coming together to support one another, to support their colleagues, support our students and our families. And I just want to say thank you to all of our staff for supporting one another and still making school a very viable thing, even though we're short-staffed. And I do want to say that I was at ISHE most of the day-to-day supporting, because we were short there, and I had a great day with the students and staff there. So thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Good evening. First, I wanted to make a couple comments on the budget. The governor has just given his new budget. We got his first look at his ideas for next year. There were some encouraging things. There were some new supports for districts in declining enrollment, which is Orville Elementary is definitely a district in declining enrollment. But I think the overall tone, we would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit larger of an investment in the local control funding formula. Instead, we saw a lot of categorical type programs, from different new programs to trying to combat climate change with electric bus programs. where you kind of would hope we would invest more in the core educational program. So that was sort of the summary of the budget. It was a good budget, but it had, with all the inflation, they'd call it a treading water budget. And then I also wanted to take a second to thank Nurse Terry and all of the health aides at all the sites. I've been working with them quite extensively this year with the COVID testing, and they have been having to learn on the fly and deal with, everybody's got different concerns about testing, and they've been great. And I just wanted to thank them for all their hard work.
Thank you. Janet?
Thank you. I would also like to say thank you very much. I think Andrew's right. The health aides and the nurse have been working tirelessly trying to keep up with contact tracing. Kudos to them. And also kudos to everybody out there pitching in. So as Dr. Holtum said, you go to sites and we're all trying to help figure out how to get coverage in classrooms, at schools. And it's really kind of neat to see how everybody will pitch in and help out. And principals have been 7 days straight in a row out in classrooms and helping and trying to make it work. So, and it's neat because when you go call them to see where's the greatest need is, they have such a great spirit of we're going to make it work. And it's very heartwarming to see such a community pulled together. So I think that's neat. Today we had our tier 2 Pbas team meeting, which has been exciting to see. We have been training on tier 1 for quite a while. Tier 2 is where we really get into helping students with specific behaviors and really target it more. They've been doing tier 2 throughout our district, but we're doing training to make sure that we're systemically being consistent throughout the district. And it was a really good training today. I saw a lot of participation. And we are also doing our DESA assessment, which is new this year. And that's where we're doing our screeners for SEL. And it's helping us to identify proactively who we need to work with on student support so that we can help with some of the preventative measures. And our kudos out to our psychs and our counselors because they've really helped lead the way on how to use and interpret the assessment. So thanks to them as well. And then I just wanted to make one correction. At the last board meeting, there was a comment made by OETA president that the behavior was so out of control that we had a police officer called out to Oakdale. And in verifying that information and talking to Principal Betancourt, he said that there was a substitute principal that day, but he called out because there was a missing child and it was after school. It was a miscommunication in family of where the kids to go, house A or house B. They ended up at B and everybody's expecting to be at A. And so it was really just a miscommunication on where those kids were to go. And they were found very quickly, but it had to do with helping find some kids is why they had been called out to the school. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Kimberly?
Good evening. I have a couple things to share with the board tonight. One is that I finally received a word from our consultant regarding the inclusive preschool. She said that she had received word that the applications will be forthcoming, to keep watching the mail list that I'm on. I will continue to check with her. Hopefully we will get the application. I'll be able to get it in timely. She's as excited as I am. We're just looking for that. The other thing I wanted to report on was the supports that we have been doing in the special ed area. As you know, I shared with you last month, we have 90-minute grade level meetings, 2 separate ones per month. I have one with the mild moderate support needs teachers, and then I have a separate one with the extensive support needs teachers. So this month in our 90-minute monthly meeting, we focused on behavior supports. We spent a lot of time going over the SELPA website. We went over the Padlet. We went over a lot of the referral forms, all the resources that are available to the teachers. We went over Terry Yarberry, who is the board certified behavior analyst that's available to us. We went over some of the other programs that we have brought in just to make sure that the teachers were fully aware of all the resources that were available to them. We also I made sure that I did all the announcements and gave them an opportunity to present topics of interest that they were interested in. We are going to bring in Dr. Aaron Benton next month to the mild moderate support needs grade level meeting. He's going to do a training on the Learning Center model, which is the actual name for a blended program. He has a training that he has developed. He's provided it before, but he's willing to come in and provide it to our teachers, just to be more supportive. The other thing is I wanted to make sure that the board knew that we are fully staffed in most classrooms in our district. We have an average in the mild moderate support needs classrooms of 15 students. I do want to point out that a lot of those are RSP or mild moderate students who spend most of the day in the gen ed classroom. So the kids are coming in and out, and it's rare to have all 15 of them there at the same time. Every mild moderate support needs classroom has at least 2 5-hour aides. Many have 3. So we're talking a adult or staff ratio of 1 to 5 students. This is higher support than the normal average for both the state and the county, if you were to be looking at some of their classrooms. In addition, we do have a few vacancies. These are like the 3rd aide for the classroom, so there would be 4 adults. We have some interviews sent up next week, and we also have some from the job fair. So we have at least, we're looking at 2 that we would need more applicants for. And again, these are 3rd people. So some classrooms do need that support. In our extensive support needs, our average is from 7 to 10 students. We have up to 4 to 5 adults in the classrooms there. So our average student to staff ratio in those classrooms is 1 to 3. We are providing additional support as we can, but we are also looking at our current fiscal responsibilities and how we can work with the teachers. I've been doing some walkthroughs. I've been looking at student schedules. I've been looking at classroom schedules and aid schedules to see how we can maximize the resources that we already have. And that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you. At this time, the board will extend an invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on matters which are school related. For those attending remotely who wish to comment, use the raise your hand button to be called on to speak. Comments or questions may also be emailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name in your email. Comments and questions received will be read into the record and are addressed during the meeting. However, comments received without the sender's name will not be shared during the meeting.
Madam President, I have 2 emails in backpack that I'd like to read at this time into the record. Okay, thank you. To all it may concern, I thought you might like to hear how the blended model class, which is the special day resource class at OFER, is working out. From someone who lives it, I am one of the aides in this class. We have a class of special day level students mixed with resource level students. These students are a mix of TK and 4th grade. The resource students have group time. Multiple groups happen in the morning and the afternoon, in which they visit our class to work on their IEP goals. The special day students also have IEP goals to work on. They are with us most of the day. Some of the special day students join their grade level classes for PE and lunch. What looks good on paper or chart or whatever isn't working in real time. It is near impossible to manage the behavior of a violent, aggressive 4th grader who has assaulted teachers and students to the point where there is fear by all. Fear of a flying chair or other object. Fear of being attacked. I personally been hit, kicked, and grabbed. I have to use my CPI training to get the student to release their hold of my hand. We attempt to run reading groups with our resource students only to have a blowout of a special day student, resulting in all students needing to evacuate and resource students being sent back to class. This happens quite often. As a parent of a former resource student, I question the legalities of this blended model and the safety of having very young children mixed with older violent children in a classroom. Please join us in room 17 and see what we do. Sincerely, Lynn Smithson. Speech therapists shortage. To whom it may concern, we have a severe shortage of speech therapists in the district. We normally have 8 to 9 therapists, and we only have 6 this year. This shortage is impacting all of our speech therapists. It has been brought up by administrators that it is because we are qualifying too many kids or keeping kids on our caseload for too long. However, we have many students with severe delays who qualify, and this has been increasing or will not go away. At this time in preschool, we have reached our caseload capacity at 40 for speech and language students, and nothing seems to be done by administration to cover or support our bursting numbers. We also have about 15 to 20 preschool referrals at any given time and have no place to put these kids when they qualify. Many are SDC kids with autism. The second part-time speech therapist for SDO was sent to issue for a day, and now administration is trying to cover the middle school load with Presence Learning, a teletherapy platform. We have not heard when that will be and if that will work for serving our kids. Even if the second speech therapist comes back for that day to help with preschoolers, that will not be enough to support the preschool needs. There's no communication or support offered. Thank you for your time and consideration. Alyssa Nutt. And there's a third, and I'll pull that up right now. Andrew,
I'll just read it.
good, please.
This is from Beth Parmentier, Oakdale Heights, TKK teacher. Hello, recently the draft calendar for the next school year was shared with OETA and its members. Here are some of the comments members wished me to share with you and the board. 1, many members missed the February break and would like to see it come back. 2, report card conferences are held the week the first trimester ends. In the past, there was a week before conferences were held. They would like to see that occur again. Thank you, Beth Parmentier, OETA president.
Okay, comments from the floor? Anyone want to speak? Okay, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per subject. Yeah, push the button and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura Marciniak. I'm the resource and special day class teacher at Ophir Elementary. This is my 23rd year teaching, and I've been with OCESD for 8 years. I'd first like to share some really good news that at Ophir Elementary this past weekend, after 2 years of waiting, we had our nature sensory path painted on our playground by the Rotary and the Las Plumas Interact Club. So if you know any members of those organizations, it'd be great to thank them. You can also see some pictures on our Facebook page. Kids are really thoroughly enjoying it. It's giving them that extra outside time to get some of those sensory needs met. So then I'll get to what the other. I'd like to address some concerns about our district's implementation of the blended model. I'm referring to the blending of the resource and special day class students into one program managed by one case manager per site. First off, I just like to draw attention to a statement made by Director Tyler in our last meeting. At the recording mark of 14:30, she referred that the Ophir resource teacher, which is me, asked to have her program combined. I never requested that. I think maybe some of the confusion of that statement might be related to the fact that at OFER, we've always had students that are on the bubble between programs. And I've had a couple parents request that their students stay in a resource program, even though they probably should have moved to a special day class. But since we were their homeschool, we were able to accommodate and make that parent request happen. So those are some things, I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect as to, I didn't raise my hand and say, yes, I want to be a blended model. The concern that I have with the blended model is that special educators who are required to implement the new blended programs, which I now believe are called the Learning Center, I cite a district-wide, we feel like we weren't consulted, trained, and in many instances, given very short notice of new students arriving on campus who require a vastly different level of service than their current programs were set up for. Some students even came from a highly specialized autism class at Wyandotte Academy, which has since been collapsed and absorbed by other sites. Many of the students were reassigned to their schools of residence, which I support fully, but not all the programs are available at all sites. Therefore, creating a one-size-fits-all model from something that was a different model. We were all resource teachers, and then all of a sudden, all these special day class students arrived. My concern is that if we are to continue the blended model, that the elementary programs from site to site need to be divided into the TK2 model and the 3-5 model. I also believe.
You've hit the 3-minute mark.
Oh, I did.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I have a lot to say. But anyway,
Thank you.
I'll follow up later.
Anyone else want to speak from the floor? Do we have any hands raised online?
There's no hands raised.
There's Shauna just raised a hand. It says on the screen. But we can see. Oh, it's gone now. She put it down. She must have put it down. Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll move on to presentations. Report on discipline and intervention at Ishii Hills Middle School.
Button.
This item is going to be pulled because the principal is out on COVID right now, but I will say the staff has been working with her and they have been drafting some plans and ideas of how they're going to address some of the behaviors that have been of concern.
And Madam President, we'd like to just bring this back next month.
Okay. Did we lose a recording? Technical difficulties, but it looks like we are still online with our participants through Zoom.
Mhm. Do I need to? Ooh, I didn't-
Okay, so we will move on to the student behavior report.
All right,
Okay,
and that's what I have to plug in.
thank you.
Plug in, we can move on to the next one and we can circle back.
Okay, so we're going to move on and circle back to that one. So we'll move on to item C, 2022-23 enrollment projections.
I've presented the enrollment projections that we're using for staffing. Our enrollment projections, you take each grade, each class and reduce it by 2% since that's our average loss in enrollment. And then that's how you sort of map out the year. The one caveat this year, well, maybe two caveats this year, we'll be looking at our enrollment again before we finalize our staffing, as we have seen a reduction in enrollment over the year. Typically, we gain enrollment, so we're going to have to reevaluate a little bit. The other caveat, the stream expansion is slated for next year. That's going to drop 60 to 90 students out of our TK through second range of students on this enrollment projection. But when we're talking about this particular enrollment projection, we're using it for how do we staff So the conservative thing to do is to leave the students in, since we don't know where they're going to be. If it's going to be 30 students we lose, all 90, if it's going to be at one site. So we'll have to, it might be a little bit more movement than usual at the beginning of the year as we have less students in certain pockets. And we also have the luxury of having, some COVID positions and things that we will be able to use COVID money should we be overstaffed to, find maybe alternative assignments and things. So this is the enrollment projection for this year, or for next year. And I think that's it. Any questions about the enrollment projection?
What is the current enrollment this year? And we're projecting more, 9 additional for next year?
Yeah, and that does have a reduction of 2% per grade level, but when you think about each class is a varied in size, so we lose a small class and maintain a couple larger classes, so your enrollment kind of fluctuates that way.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Janet, are you ready to go back to student behavior report?
I think I am. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so the board had asked if I would present some information on our student behavior. And so I wanted to start off with a quote. This is just from a principal, but I think it reflects the common sentiments around the country. Students are not only reeling from trauma and loss related to the pandemic, they also missed out on social interaction at a crucial time in their development, meaning they return to school lacking skills like conflict management that they ordinarily learn from their peers. This is a principal from Indianapolis, but what we're finding throughout the country is that we do know our kids did come back and don't have all the social skills that we had seen in years prior. And as it was mentioned earlier tonight, we have some students who've never had a full school year. So they've never had the amount of practice and learning that we've been able to provide them. So that definitely has played into how we are doing in terms of student behavior. So what we're going to do is I'll take a look at suspension data. I'll give you in-school suspension data, office referrals, and then what interventions we've done this year to try to help mitigate and support our students so we can avoid problematic behavior. So on suspension, I tried to do a longitude so we could look at trend analysis. However, you're going to notice I just pulled out the year 2021. That was last year. It was too much of an anomaly for what's usually going on and would be poor to be used in analysis, trend analysis. So if you take a look, what I am showing you is by school, and I'm showing you kind of how many suspensions we have throughout the last 4 years. And at Central, overall, the trend is down, although you will notice that in November and December this year, we are starting to show an uptick in terms of office referrals. When you take a look at ISHE, again, you see an overall downward trend of suspensions. And you'll see in this year, for the most part, the trend is still going down, but we do have a month that it kind of went up a little bit, but we'll keep an eye on it. But overall at ISHE, what we're finding is suspensions are going down in terms of out of school suspensions. Then we look at Oakdale Heights. Oakdale Heights has a slight downward trend as you look at it. Again, when you look at 21, 22, what I want to remind you is we're doing a tally of how many suspensions per year. So you almost have to stop at December to get the full tally of the month for the 21, 22. So of course it's going to be a lower number. And in that case, I just look at the trends of what's going on August, September, October, November. Then we take a look at Stanford. Stanford has unusually low numbers. When you take a look at it, we do see, and we'll talk later about all the prevention they've done. But remember, we had the presentation last week from our last board meeting with Jen McGowan and Jessica North. They did a great job showing some of the programs they've added to their campus. That could be, guessing is playing into it, but they do have very low numbers this year. Then we take a look at OFER and Wyandotte, and OFER things are kind of steady, a little tiny bit down, not a whole lot. And Wyandotte, we see that behaviors have really gone down quite a bit. It's been pretty significant. When you listen to some of the stories and you get into the data and you hear the stories about kids, there's some really amazing improvement we've seen in some behaviors. For example, at Wyandotte, there was a kiddo, when I came last year, we even brought the consultant for the DOJ into a meeting to see if we could help figure out what's going on with this kiddo. Couldn't get him to come to school. If he did come to school, he didn't usually have a successful day beyond the first hour. And he is now in school and doing quite well. And so it's really heartwarming to see some individual stories of how things have gotten better for some of our kids. And I think some of the different interventions we're doing has played a big part in that and has really helped. I took a look at the in-school suspension because sometimes what happens in schools, if you have suspensions go down, in-school suspensions go up. So I brought it just to look at it to see if indeed that was the case. And what you see is really in-school suspension is not really used very much, except for you're going to look at Ishii Hills and they have a big uptick on theirs. So they've created a new program this year where let's say that a student is suspended for 3 days for fighting. They're gone normally the 3 days. They come back on day 4. They're to bring back their packet of work. And there's supposed to be a reentry meeting to talk about how they're going to handle problems better in the future. What they're doing this year is they're bringing them back after the first 2 days of out of school. They bring them back that last day, make sure they're in a separated school, in a separated class. They're doing all their independent study that they were assigned while they were on suspension. They do their reentry meeting to make sure they're all set and all the systems are in place to help avoid future fights and make sure they know how to understand how to address the behaviors. And so you see that the suspensions have gone up, but they've actually used it as a great intervention to help support the kids. So even though the numbers are higher, it's with a great purpose in mind. Then you take a look and you're going to look at the elementary. And in-school suspension is non-existent. You don't really see that. I really apologize. I think I forgot to mute my phone for the board meeting. And I think it just stopped. Okay, so office referrals. Now this is a good one to look at because sometimes you can say, oh, you're playing with your suspension numbers. But when you look at office referrals, this is what comes from the classroom. This is where teachers are saying, hey, this child is misbehaving. We need some help and support. So you take a look at the office referrals and what you're going to see is that we have Central on the last 2 months of November, December, January, they really are having a significant increase at their school. If you look at 18, 19, 19, 20, his numbers stayed about the same, but we do have an increase this year at Central. You look at Ishii and Ishii is showing a big decrease. And you're seeing far fewer referrals than there have been in the past. You go to Oakdale Heights, we take a look at that. Overall, he has a downward trend going on. And Stanford also is showing a downward trend in terms of the office referrals and behaviors. When you look at Ophir, it's kind of steady, hasn't really made much significant change, a little higher, a little lower at the months, but it's pretty much staying about the same. And Wyandotte is seeing a decrease in their suspensions or office referrals, I'm sorry. So when you take a look at that, another question I had been asked was, what is going on between general ed and special ed? How are the behaviors between the two? Because there was some concerns being surfaced. So what I did is I did a comparison of office referrals of gen ed kids and sped kids. So if you look, I'm going to go through the first column in detail and then the rest I'll just kind of summarize. So in the first row, you have Central Middle School, and we identify how many kids received referrals. And then the second is the total number of referrals. So out of those 65 kids, they generated a total of 269 referrals. So I went ahead and I did a little bit of a statistical average only so that you could do a quick comparison. Because when I was looking at it yesterday, without having that average, it made it a little more difficult to look at. Then I identified where were they getting the referrals? Is it more in the classroom, on the playground, in the hallway? Middle school hallway was a bigger issue than at the primary grades or other. And it could be a lot of different places. So then if you wanted to compare Central, then if we look at Central, there are SPED students, we had 10 kids that received referrals. And of those 10 kids, they generated a total of 55 referrals, which gave them about a 5-point average. So higher than the gen ed kids. And then you look at where are they mostly getting the referrals? Well, you're going to see that at Central, the SPED kids mostly were getting them in the classroom. And the 3 schools, for the most part, that had higher classroom and gen ed also had higher SPED. So you're going to see that you had Central, you had Ishii, Oakdale Heights, and that had more classroom referrals than playground, and Wyandotte. Then when you go over to the SPED side, with the exception of Ishii, the same trend was going on. They had more classroom referrals than they did playground and hall. When you look at the students, or you take a look at the data, you can also take a look at individual students. So what I did is I pulled up how many office referrals we have of more than 3 office referrals. Each one of these bars represents 1 student. So what you see is if you go to the far right corner, we have 6 students that really are having a difficult time, and we need to really work on in terms of what their behavior is. We can identify what kind of behavior and all that, but for this purpose, as you were looking at it, when you hear we're having behavior problems, really you can look and see where are the bulk of the problems going on. So Central, we had about 6. If you look at Ishii, they have about 3 kids that are the bulk of the office referrals. Then you look at Oakdale, and Oakdale, we have 1 child who is really having a tough time. And I am going to tell you that this is a kiddo who it depends on if he is able to take his medicine or not, whether or not he is able to maintain. And they try a variety of strategies to help him on the days he doesn't. You look at Ofer, this is a student, no, he's not special ed. This particular student is not special ed. You look at therefore, of those 4 top high flyers, 1 of them is special ed. The other 3 are not. And I apologize, I'm going to go backwards for a second. When we look at Oakdale, out of their top 4, Oakdale had 3 out of the 4 were general ed students. And then we look at Wyandotte, and Wyandotte, 4 out of the 4 are general ed students. So I did the top 4 students on that. But on that one, 2 of them are kindergarten. And a lot of times our kindergarten are not identified in SPED yet. But this is quite a little phenomena they had going on at Wyandotte at the beginning of the year when, and it has gotten much better, but we had some kids that were loping. And so they were kindergartners, and that was a lot of their behavior issues.
And for those who aren't familiar with that term, that
Oh.
means kind of running away from class.
Whoops, that was Stanford that had the lopers. I apologize. Wyandotte, they were also lopers. Now that I think about it, those 2 that are at the top end. So, and you can see at Wyandotte, they have done some remarkable things too. And they have really been able to take a couple of kids and shown great improvement in their behavior. But we do have 2, as you can see, that really still need a lot of attention. And we need to work with how to resolve that. So what I did want to talk about for a second is what are we doing to help the schools, and what are we doing district-wide to address all these issues? So This year, we have now hired 2 additional educational therapists. One just started on Friday, but in talking of trying to get the ratio down of 1-to-1, 1 counselor to every school, we weren't able to hire counselors this year, but we were able to hire educational specialists. So each of the specialists now have 3 schools, and they work with the tier 3 kids on our PBIS. They're the kids that, when you look back, I'm going to go back for a second. These 2 on the far right side would be considered our tier 3. And that's who those educational specialists are really working with, is helping those kids.
Excuse me, Janet, educational therapist.
Educational therapist, sorry. The second thing we've done is we did this year hire teachers on special assignment, and at the different sites, it looks a little different. They're either academic or they are behavioral. And they have helped our kids with our MTSS model of being able to support them either academically or behaviorally. And sometimes when you support with academic, your behavior gets better. Another thing that went on this year is we have been working with our counselors and training them on how to do an FBA, which is really analyzing student behavior and figuring out what's triggering the behavior, and then how do we work with it to try to get that behavior changed. So they're being trained on that to provide tier 3 support at all the school sites. Our psychs have been helping working with that, and we also have Jessica from BCOE who has been training for us. In addition, this year we started DESA, which is our social emotional measure. The point of the DESA is to identify groups of kids that may have problems with physical aggression or need attention, and try to teach them the social skills of how they get the attention appropriately. And so the point of the DESA is to help us be more strategic and proactively offering small group counseling sessions with our kids. So more support with that. The schools have started to do some of that. I think we're going to see more after we finish our second round of assessments. We do have ongoing administrative training, and so they are getting monthly training on behaviors, PBIS, how to support at the school sites, what are the different strategies. And we also are continuing our PBIS team meeting trainings as well. Then we do training, PBIS training, and we have, I think, 6 days this year that we were allowed to do training for our minimum days. And of those 6 days, we'll use 5 days to do training. The 6th day is in May. And so that's usually to help wrap up the year. At Wyandotte, Oakdale, and Stanford, an extra teacher was hired for a 0.5. And last board meeting, you had a great presentation, actually from Jen, that talked about how they were handling the behavior and how they were providing sensory rooms and really trying to allow the children an opportunity to de-escalate. We contracted with BCOE for so many days at each school site so that the schools could use it to either identify the real problem behavior, identify a classroom that was struggling with behavior, and this consultant would go in and either support a teacher or could support the whole school or support the principal and what some next steps could be. But it was meant to be proactive at the different sites and getting at least 4 days of support. We do continue to do district-wide training. We just mentioned the 5 days on minimum days. This year, when the school year started, we knew the kids were going to come back needing additional support. We knew that because we could tell from the spring. Some kids had been gone all year. Some kids had been gone a partial year. So when we started the year, we really encouraged everybody to just really take the first 3 weeks and work on relationships, student relationships. On a trauma-informed classroom, the 3 important things is to make sure that you're positive and you're predictable, very predictable environments. Another one is student relationships, that you build really strong relationships. So we backed off our iReady testing for 3 weeks and didn't start that, so that it allowed everybody a chance to not have to rush in and start testing and get going on the academics, but to really work with the kids and help support them socially and emotionally. And the PBIS monitor, who does 4 days at every site, We also have her supporting our teams. She will go to PBIS meetings, help them if they have behaviors to help identify what preventions can be done to help the kids make better choices. And we do quarterly meetings. So before the school year started, a meeting went out to all the school sites. Jennifer and I go and meet with all the principals. We go through their behaviors. We go through their PBIS plans, talk about any challenges they're having, brainstorm about what kids are being successful, what kids need more support, and what we can do. So we also do that 4 times a year to help support our sites. And then the principals are having quarterly meetings, and they're just getting this started, where they're talking with their staff of what is the trend for the trimester. They have monthly meetings, and now they do a quarterly one, and then they're posting that and communicating to parents and staff. So these are a few of the items. So when we look at the behavior, and you see that we did have some downward trends, we know we're going through a really tough year, but I think all of these interventions that we have put in have really helped support, make things better. They're not, it's not where we want it to be, but it certainly, I think, demonstrates that there's been a lot of work put into trying to make it better. And I know we need to continue on that path. Any questions?
Board, does anyone have a question or comment? I've got one. I mean, it looks like we've added a lot of great resources and services, and that we're seeing the effects of that with the numbers. They're trending down and behavioral issues. So I'm wondering where the disconnect is, that for the past 3 meetings, we've been getting letters from teachers and staff of concerns of increased behavioral issues, specifically with special ed. So what do you, where's the disconnect with that? And what do you think's going on?
So we did do with Ishi after the first board meeting. Ishi has been working. We did a survey with that staff and asked them to, and the principal was very good about telling everybody, be upfront, let's figure it out, give us some honest feedback. So I feel like with that site, they have been having some good conversations. We didn't get the survey going for the whole district yet, only because honestly, there was 8 days between the last board meeting and the time I've been in district to be able to get this survey done. And we've been kind of covering schools. So we're going to get it done. There's a plan to get that done, to see if we could dig a little deeper, because you're right. We are hearing that there's issues and we do see it, but it doesn't always match what the data says. So then we have to go to the narrative. And I think with the, when we did the survey with Ishi, I think that kind of helped us see kind of where their issues are. And actually, I've got to tell you, by the time I got over to that school, I went over the very next day after the board meeting in December, and staff already knew exactly where their issues were. 7th period between passing time was a time that they had identified, and they knew. I had several teachers that told me which 3 classes were struggling the most. So they were already self-identifying kind of what the issues are. And even though we have, even though we are showing that we have all these resources in place, I don't want to undermine the fact that we do have. So you look at Oprah, that little kiddo, that's that far right kiddo, it's a challenge at that school right now. And so we were supposed to meet this week. Remember I said Jennifer and I go out to the schools and we were going to have a discussion about this little guy. However, this student, because of shortages, the principal was in classrooms and we were covering sites. So we didn't get to have that meeting. But those concerns are real. And it may not be that it's a bulk, but you'd have to talk to the teachers. But it could be, you know what, when you have a student that is having a lot of challenges on your campus, it can impact the whole campus. And so we do see that we still have some kids that we need to work and problem solve and figure out how to turn their trajectory to be very successful. So I don't want to present there are no issues, because there definitely are issues, but we are working through them and trying to get them addressed And I don't know how to answer it other than I think it's going to take a little bit more investigating.
Mhm.
And I think the survey might help.
Mhm.
And I know that Dr. Holton was going to meet and have a conversation. And I think that we can look at the data and it gives us a big broad view. And then we have to get into the personal stories.
Mhm.
And I think when Dr. Holton meets with the special ed staff, I think that's going to bring out a lot of concern. And don't forget, this is a hard year. I certainly do not want to undermine how under communicate how difficult this year is. We have been working hard, but it's a tough year.
Mhm.
And, you know, between kids here, kids not here, did the kids learn this? Did they learn that? I mean, it has been a challenging year. So when that happens, I was just on a conference last night on how to support principals and teachers in a you know, after crisis or COVID. And they talk about how your coping skills aren't there as good as they are prior. So when you have that one student, that can also become a real challenge to people because it's really on top of everything else. And so, so the concerns are real. And until we are able to address some of our little more challenging folks, that's going to continue. That stress level is high and very real, and we have to figure out how to solve it.
Madam President, if I may, that I have scheduled that special education meeting with Beth Parmentier, the OET president, to talk about special ed and special ed need and concerns, with specifically asking them to come with, help us find resolution to some of these problems that we have. And at that meeting, and at that meeting will be a perfect tenant to have that conversation. But I also want to share just a quick anecdote, because we know and we hear of the issues that are going on in our school sites, and they are real.
Mhm.
Okay. And our patients are gone because of everything that we've dealt with. Now, in my mind, that there's two things that are driving our, in my opinion, the two biggest issues that are driving our fatigue and our concern. One is defiance, because we have so many kids that are defiant, and some of the tools that we had to discipline have been taken away from us. 48900K, which is a suspension code, is no longer part of the education code for K-8. Okay. But I also would like to share that we have an increased sense of violence in our schools, where it has been glamorized to fight and do things. It's posted all over the internet and things of that nature. And it's very hard to combat that. Now, from a defiance issue, I'm going to give you an anecdote that happened to me today. Because Renee is out, I was the fill-in principal today because we're short-staffed there. And it was at the end of 7th grade recess, and kids were playing in a football game. And right at the end, two students got very heated. And one of them was just walking away because it wasn't that big of a deal to him. And the other one, it was very, very big deal. And he started using profanity and stuff. And I knew this kid from his prior school, and I kind of walked up to him and said, "Hey, let's calm down." And he used some fiery words and things like that. Now, in past years, I would like, okay, you're coming with me to the principal's office because you're using inappropriate language. Now, we've been encouraged to look for other means of correction and to kind of steer away from some of the more heavy-handed discipline and look for other means to help this kid. Now, I walked this kid to class to make sure that he had no other further incident. I had a brief conversation with his teacher to hope, let her know that he kind of had a blowout, and I got him back into class. Now, in a lot of ways, that's great because he's getting his education, hopefully he can calm down in there. And I kind of just stood there to make sure that he was properly placed. But at the same time, some of the language that he was using and the way he was handling himself for that 3 or 4 minute increment was totally inappropriate. And 10 years ago, I would have absolutely been calling his parent and possibly suspending him for the language that he used towards that other student and towards me as the acting principal. And we're looking for other means of correction because we need to keep these kids in school. We need to educate them, and they can't be educated at home. But at the same time, we are now compromising our control on our campuses, which is a big concern. And it's a real concern. And so as I hear these concerns and as I visit sites, I'm going to try to find that happy medium, because we know that we're trying to improve our data. And there's some great things with that, but there's also some real fallout to that, because in some cases there's a sense of loss of control at times on our campuses because kids are not respecting authority on our campuses. Now, I think it goes beyond some of the things that we're doing. I think society is lending to that as well. But at the same time, I feel like we need to take back some of the control at our campus and find that happy medium. And I'm happy to work with all the stakeholders involved on how we can find a better happy medium for that, because we can't keep doing what we're doing because it's wearing people out. It is causing frustration for not just our staff, but also our other students, because we have to have a culture. And so I'm going to be spending a lot of time working on this. And this is, specifically for the board to hear, but also for everybody who's, listening to this, that we know this is a problem. And I'm going to ask everybody again, the stakeholders, to help me find solutions, because we got a lot of great people in this district, a lot of smart people in this district. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest issues we have in this district. And we need to come up with some viable solutions right now so that we can meet all the needs of everybody who's asking us to do this and that. But at the same time, and so our data is, functioning well, but we also have to really get to the nitty gritty and make sure that we have a culture on our school site that people feel good about. So thank you.
So, Dr. Holdham, are you saying that the act of letting that student know and understand that that behavior was unacceptable and then redirecting his energy to a more appropriate location was the incorrect, and we should have been more heavy-handed with that student?
No, I'm not saying that. And I will also add that I went back later on in that day and had another conversation with that kid when he was calmed down, and he apologized and took ownership over his behavior. And I'm not saying that, in retrospect, I would take that kid and suspend him. What I'm saying is that what I did was calm him down and get him back into class. But I don't think that, as I kind of thought about it the entire day, I don't think that changed his behavior. And our goals are to change behavior. And
Right, but change behavior, it did change his behavior. He stopped doing that and he resumed his class in his normal day. But is it changing the culture?
that's a great point. And what I want to change is, yes, that moment, but I also want to ensure that tomorrow when he has that same situation, he doesn't do that exact same thing. And what I want to try to find is what's the mechanism for that kid to change his behavior
Right.
the next time.
What is it that makes him think, assuming it is a him, that behavior was appropriate in the first place? And whether or not that is a personal choice or a cultural distinction?
Well, I'll just say that the behavior, regardless of background or sex or anything, was inappropriate. And we work with the individual child to try to bring about change and reflection. And that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out, is where's that happy medium between what I did and what I did 10 years ago as a principal.
So what
And-
I'm not hearing from anyone is parent involvement here.
That would be my second point.
Because
Where are
this
the
goes
parents?
far beyond classrooms and recess and teachers, and it's affecting the kids that want to be there. And these bad behaviors are met with, let me hold your hand and walk you back to your seat with no consequence. I mean, perhaps calling home would do no good. What is the parent attitude about this? How are the parents involved in behavioral correction or disciplinary action? Or I'm kind of going off here, but what I'm not hearing is how are we bringing in the whole family, because who's ultimately responsible for these kids?
And I will share that in a lot of cases, we do bring in the family, and we do make a lot of contacts. And I know this kid has had a lot of interaction with the process of the office and home connection. And we do a lot. And I'm talking about Ishi. And so I'll use Ishi as an example. They do a ton of calls there. Renee does a ton of home visits. We do a lot of outreach. And I will say that in some cases, parents are beautiful and wonderful. And then on the other cases where we can't get a hold of parents, we can't track down parents, and everything in between. And sometimes we get resistance. And I don't want to ever downplay parents, but we have, just like in the society, we have every degree of ability out there. And that is one of the things that if the board or stakeholders have, great programs that we can bring in to support our parents. And in fact, we have looked into some programs, and Ishi specifically is bringing in some outside resources for parents. We're looking to do that because we know that it really does start. They're a huge piece of it.
And it's hard, it's just a little bit challenging to look at the data and align it with everything that has been shown to me as far as behavioral issues that are coming at us as the problems of what's going on. It's hard to align that. Additionally, with the decrease in the ed code for suspension or disciplinary action. So the suspension rates and the in-school suspension, and then couple that with the change in the decrease in consequence. Have you had this many people coming forward, or students or staff coming forward telling you about behavioral issues in the past, coupled with the large suspension rates on here? There's nothing that we can really do at this point to bring back the suspension rates or anything like that. But I do think that a soft hand is not going to make anything better, as we can see. But
I kind of disagree, but every student is different. My kids didn't need to have. I practiced psychological torture. They didn't bring their pencils to school. I sent the school a box of pencils to the specific class with their name on it. Shame and embarrassment.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Well, I think that this has been a good conversation, and it's a start. And I appreciate that you are planning to reach out and gather more information from the schools and have the conversations with the schools. And I look forward to a report back. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, we'll now move on to item number 7, action session, public comments on action items. The board will extend an invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on items that are listed on the agenda. For those attending remotely who wish to comment, use the raise your hand button to be called on to speak. Comments may also be mailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name in your email. comments received that pertain to items listed on the agenda will be read into the record during this time. However, comments received without the sender's name will not be read. The Brown Act does not allow the governing board to discuss or take action on any item that is not posted on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per subject. Do we have any emails from Backpack?
None.
No, we do not.
It looks like we have a hand raise possibly online. No? Why do we see it here? Oh, it's in the Q&A. It's not a hand raise. Apologize. Okay. From the floor, does anyone want to speak on an agenda item? Okay, we'll move on to number 8, consent agenda, minutes of the December 15th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. And we need to approve the minutes of December 15th, 2021.
As
Right.
part of the consent agenda, we can do it.
Oh, we do it all together. That's right. Sorry. Okay. Any questions or concerns about any of the items on the consent agenda from the board? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Number 9, new business. Review quarterly report of district compliance with Ed Code Section 35186, Uniform Complaint Procedures.
As you can see from the report,
Williams.
there are no complaints for this quarter.
Okay.
No action.
All right, so there's no action necessary on that. So we'll move on to B, review proposed 2022-23 school calendar.
So, Madam President, the board will review the proposed calendar for the 22-23 school year. There's no action necessary at this time, but like to just point out that in public comment, OETA did bring out that they had 2 proposals or 2 ideas that they would like the board to explore. One is the February break. This year, we have I believe it's a Monday or a Friday and a Monday off. And typically we follow the high school district calendar because of the transportation. And this is their proposed calendar, and we typically follow, but we don't necessarily have to. We can do what we please. And the other request had to do with report cards.
I remember when we voted on the last calendar, and I would agree with the person who submitted their request to bring back the February break, especially because of burnout. That's my simple comment.
To the high school. We may ask the high school too, if they're interested.
I will say I haven't talked to the high school regarding this for some time, but I will share that they've adopted the same schedule for next year, and so
Here's one rub that we may end up wanting to consider. If we include the break in February, that would push our end date of school to the 8th of June, which would mean extra money out of our pockets for transportation for that last week. So there is.
and that is true.
So out-of-pocket funds for the week that,
It would basically
Just-
consist of 3 days.
okay.
A variation. Now, on the flip side, we would not be requiring transportation during the February break. And so it would just be offset in a matter of speaking. But it is something that we would have to discuss with them to ensure, because they do have, a negotiated contract with their union bus drivers specifically. But that's something that we would, we would work with them. If it's at the pleasure of the board for us to bring back a calendar next month that reflects the February break, we would work with the high school district between now and then to have more answers for the board.
Do we have a deadline regarding that?
I don't know if there's a hard and fast deadline for that, but at the same time, we do need to get one in place so that we can kind of plan for next year regarding our start date and our end date, so that we can plan professional development and ensure that we have a calendar in place to move forward.
When in February would this break hypothetically come?
It's usually the third week of February.
So, and we don't take Lincoln's Day, birthday, we just take President's Day, is that correct?
We
Or do
just take the 2 President's Days and put them together in that week, and then we just have 3 non-student day or 3 student days, and just put them at the end of the calendar, or at the calendar end of the school year. So instead of getting out, for example,
So
June
we're
5th.
talking 3 days, not a full week.
Right.
Because here's my concern. I don't want to come back from Christmas as the first week in January, hit Martin Luther King Day, and then immediately take a week off and then take 2 other holidays. I mean, because then it's like, when do we go to school? I mean, and how do we explain that to people? I mean,
Yeah.
to me, this makes sense if we're going to do the 2 days are there and we're talking about 3 days. We're not talking about an additional week scattered about and,
Doesn't it all move into the same?
It all moves into the same week.
that makes
So
sense.
then you're talking in 2 days.
Three days.
days.
3 days.
Because you're already getting 2 for the holidays.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps me if somebody asks, I can say, well, this is what it's actually 3 days. We're not talking about another week scattered around here.
And then what about the comment on the report card conferences? What was changed on that it was moved to a week later?
I would have to, that request was just brought up today, so we'd have to get back to you. But for the most part, I don't know if that would, what that entails right now, but
Okay.
we'll have, if it has any impact at all from a logistical standpoint. Like moving our days in February has logistical impacts, but I don't know if that will or not.
Any other questions or concerns? I have one thing to bring up that I would like to see changed, but I guess it depends on what the board thinks. But the Christmas recess and Easter recess, I'd prefer those to be a winter break and a spring break, since not all families celebrate those holidays.
Mhm.
Any comments?
Agreed.
I disagree with that. I'm fine with Easter, I suppose, but Christmas, the vast majority of people celebrate Christmas, and it'll be Christmas, in my opinion. I don't rule the world, but I'm not going to support that motion.
Miss Lisa, do you have an opinion?
So Christmas, you guys were hard and fast on. Would you consider changing Easter to spring break?
I'm comfortable with Easter.
I would say I agree.
So we can table the approval of this and have it brought back. amended?
Tonight is just it's just a
Okay.
procedural discussion item, and we'll bring this back with some of the noted changes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item C, select trustee representatives for district committees. The board will select trustee representatives to serve on the following committees: the Local Control and Accountability Plan, District English Learner Advisory Committee, District Safety Committee, and Supportive Schools Committee.
So, Madam President, we have 4 committees here, and we always look for trustee support and input. when we hold these committees. All four are very important. Today, Kim Felder, my administrative assistant, sent out some descriptions of these committees as well as some of the dates which they'll be held. And so tonight we'd like to have board members sign up for the various committees so we have representation at all four committees. At this time, if you don't know your calendar, you don't have to ultimately commit, but it would be nice to get as much input and sign up tonight as possible.
Yes, Sandra.
I want to do the LCAP and safety if I can.
I would have an opinion on which I would like to represent as well.
Yes.
The District English Learner Advisory.
Lisa, do you have a preference? Bill?
I support your guys' desire to do those.
I would like to also continue on the Supportive Schools Committee. So it looks like we have representatives for each of those.
We do, thank you.
Do we need a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it's approved. Okay, item D, consider admitting underage students into the district's transitional kindergarten program. The board will consider approving or denying requests for 2 underage students to be admitted into the transitional kindergarten at Ophir School. The transitional kindergarten program is for students who turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. The district will not receive ADA for the students until they turn 5.
So, Madam President, I'd like to point out that their birthdays would be next week, and so we would start collecting ADA next week on these students. We have done all the procedures that we do when admitting transitional kinder kids into our classes, which testing and making sure that they're ready based on their age and ability level, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. The teacher of this kindergarten class has written me an email advocating for the passage of this. And we think it's great for kids to have every opportunity to get a head start before they enter into kindergarten. And so it's my recommendation that the board approve these recommendations.
Dr. Holton, we have room in these classes.
That's a great question. We do have room in this class. This is a heavily impacted class, though. It is going to put it at its max, which is a concern of mine. It's less of a concern because the teacher has advocated for these 2 students, and I think they have a very good relationship with these families, and they know the kids that they're inheriting, and so they feel like it's going to be a positive thing, even though it's adding 2 additional kids, which again does always concern me. But based on that advocacy, I am for this.
And they both have the same birthday?
I think they're twins.
Oh, because you said families. So that was
Family.
okay. I was kind of, I support this idea. I think as long as the teachers have the opportunity to evaluate the child and determine that they are ready to do this and they feel that they can handle the extra work that comes along with 2 more, I support their desire to do that and the parents' desire to have the children in school. So I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Second,
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. All right, business and finance, adopt resolution 21-2207, CalShape number 1.
We've applied for the CalShape grant and we have been awarded 2 of the 4 parts we've applied for. The 4 parts are 2 parts are plumbing and 2 parts are HVAC. The HVAC applications are still to be determined whether or not we'll be approved for those grants. So we're still working on those. So hopefully you'll see more CalShape stuff coming up as we get those HVAC grants. These 2 grants are for updating toilets and urinals to have the appropriate water flow throughout the district. So it's broken into two separate resolutions because the grant had to be broken up that way due to the number of school sites allowed per grant. So that's why it's two resolutions. They're both the same, just for different school sites. And we're excited that we were awarded this grant, and with your approval of these resolutions, we can move forward, get the money, and update the toilets.
Board, any questions or comments?
This covers all 7 schools in the district.
I don't know if it covers SDO. Normally, because it's a preschool, it's a different pool of eligibility for most of our funding. I can look real quick. Hold on. But it does cover the other 6. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's the 6 schools and not Sierra del Oro.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion on the floor to approve Resolution 21-2207?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And adopt Resolution 21-2208, Cal Shape number 2.
It's just the
Same
same
thing.
story, just different set of sites.
Okay,
I'll make
Okay.
a motion. We approve resolution 21-22-08.
there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And thank you for passing those, and you'll all need to sign these resolutions as a board. For whatever reason, this is the most official grant that ever there was.
All right, number 11, personnel. A, consider request to extend existing leave of absences.
Madam President, we have 3 requests, subject A, B, and C. And I recommend that the board pass all 3. Under your executive content, you can read the extenuating circumstances for all 3 of the employees. Some of them are pretty severe and serious. I'd like to also mention that these leaves do not come at any cost to the district. The first one they will exhaust all their leave and then go into unpaid status, and the other 2 are in unpaid status. So it's at no detriment financially to the district and helpful towards these employees.
Do we need to consider them all individually?
We do, but I just want to kind of talk to them,
Okay.
generally speaking.
Questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion to approve A, the consider request to extend existing leave of absence?
I'll make a motion. We approve the leave of absence for classified employee number 1849.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Second one, employee number 963.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And employee number 2201. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Just for the record, I would just like to make sure that I extend my best wishes to each of those 3 associates and hope everything gets better for them.
Yes. Okay, and with that, the meeting is adjourned at 7:25.